be attended? Should I be in the Zoom? Like, did we switch or is it still the same?
Each week it'll be Tuesday and Thursday.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So you're supposed to be in the Zoom. Okay. I know of at least one person who's not going to be here. He's supposed to be, so it will be okay to stay. Yeah. All right. I believe it's about time. Okay, well, it's good to see you all back. I hope you all weathered the storm all right. Is anybody who still doesn't have power? I can empathize with you. I didn't have power until Saturday around noon, and that was tough. That was really tough. I'll go ahead and call the roll, and I see a number of you there in Zoom. When I call your name, be sure to unmute yourself, and I'll mark that you're here. I can check the Zoom participant list, but I'd like to call your name anyway, just so you know that we know you're there. Okay? All right. Alan Albornoz. If you go by something other than what I call you, let me know. Okay. Alan. Okay. Sharon Brinson. Okay. Denise Corona. Okay. Jacob Driver. Nope. Manal Elgari. Nope. Charmaine Garin. Okay. Isaiah Gonzalez. Okay. Macy Gray. Okay. Elizabeth Huffman. Okay. Ernita Hughes. Okay. Megan Huson. Okay. Lacey Lashton. But Vanessa Paternina. Okay. Brant Leslie.
Here.
No. Patricia Lewis. Okay. Jocelyn Marceau.
Here.
Okay. I didn't hear you, but I see you're there, so I'll mark that you are there. Bradley Minninger. Hold on just a second. Okay, Bradley Menninger is not here, right? Julio Moreno.
Here.
I see you're there, but I'm not hearing you. I don't know what the problem would be. I'll mark you present. Niam Packer.
Here.
Absent. Kayla Ramos. Okay, Niam, you're muted, so unmute yourself and say
Here.
something.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So I see you're here. I'll mark you present, but I'm not hearing anything from the Zoom people. And I see that Bradley Menninger is here. Okay, but Kayla Ramos, I didn't see. Okay, Marty Sandell. Dylan Spoor.
Here.
Genoa Sires.
Here.
Okay. I see you're there. I'll mark you present, but don't know what's wrong with the sound. Joshua Urena.
Here.
Okay, I see you're here. I'll mark you present. Marcelo Dos
Here.
Santos.
Here.
Okay, I see you. Cameron Wilson.
Here. Here.
Okay, I see you waving. I don't know what's wrong with the sound. I'll try to figure that out when I can't hear you Zoom people. I'll try to have that figured out by Thursday. Apparently everybody is hearing me, so we will continue. Did want to mention a few things, adjustments we're going to make because of missing 3 days. The exam, first exam was scheduled for the 17th. We're going to move that to September 29th, which is a Tuesday. So we should definitely be able to do that on that day. The other exams will also be moved, but I'll announce those dates later. I am hoping that we will be able to do the exam without anybody having to pay for a proctor. I'm going to put up an announcement later today and ask you some questions like, can you take the exam at 12 o'clock? Can you take it at 1 o'clock? Can you take it at 2 o'clock? Can you take it at 3 o'clock on the day that we take the exam? Because I do have another class that will be taking the exam that day, and I'll be here between exams. So if I think we can probably, the other room is big, the most important thing is if you can take it on at 2 o'clock that day. But I'll explain it all in the email. But just if you give me that information, then we'll go ahead and get it set up when each person will be taking it, and then you'll know, and there won't be any uncertainty. Okay, Jonathan, I see that. I see your message.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I haven't adjusted the role for people who may have registered late, but I have marked that you are present.
Thank you.
If there's anybody else that I did not call your name, just send me an email, or you can talk to me after class. And but if you're Zooming, send me an email and tell me that you were here, but I didn't call your name. As for the sapling activities, obviously all the due dates are going to change, and since the storm, I'm sure, is an obstacle for a lot of people, for pretty much everybody, but more for some people than for others. And I don't know your individual situations. So the rule is always that the activities for the first exam closed on the day of the first exam. Okay? And then I had due dates each Friday. I encourage you to keep up. Don't get behind, and to the extent that you are behind, try to catch up as soon as you can. But in terms of how I will grade you, I won't penalize you for not meeting any due dates. The important thing is by the time we take the exam, have the activities done for the first exam. Okay? So the due dates are pretty much, the weekly due dates are pretty much suspended, okay, for this first exam. Just get caught up as soon as you can and have them done by the day of the exam, which will be the 29th. Did want to say a few more things about doing the activities. Over the summer, I looked at the activities and tried to figure out better ways to do things. I think the learning curve is especially important because it gives you lots of practice. And so keep in mind that with the learning curve, you get points for answering questions correctly. If you answer the question correctly without having to get a hint, keep in mind that you can always check the ebook or your textbook. There's no penalty for doing that. So if you come to a question you don't know how to do, look in the book, study it, and then answer that question, because then you can still get full points for that question. If you come to a question you really just can't figure out, then you can go ahead and click to have the answer shown to you. You'll see how to work it. You don't get any points for that, but you don't lose any points either. And then as you keep going, eventually they'll give you another question that'll be very similar to that. So it's not a terrible thing to just have it show you the answer. And recognize that the first questions are relatively easy. As you get those easy questions right, then it gets to harder questions, which will give you more points. Okay? And then once you get to the target score, which is often 600 or 800, once you get to there, then your score is 100%. Okay? So you've got all the points you're going to get, but you still may want to continue working, because the more you go through questions, the more practice you're going to get, and the better prepared you're going to be for the test. Yes, question.
So I was working on Saturday and I had some issues with like opportunity cost on margin. But I went past the 400 mark. The getting them wrong. So does the average, like, does the average amount you got right, is that your score or is it not?
Okay, question is about, you're talking about learning curve, right? Okay, in learning curve, it does show you the percent that you're getting right, okay? And that's a useful thing to look at, okay? But in terms of your grade, on learning curve, you're gonna get a 0 or 100%, okay? So the percentage is not, if it's low, that doesn't lower your grade, okay? However, you do want to look at that percentage. If your percentage is low, you want to think about why is it low? And, you know, think about the questions you missed, and do you now understand those questions? Okay, that's the important thing. I have seen students who, when the target was lower, I'd see students that answered a phenomenal number of questions and eventually got to the target, but their percentage they got right was low. Okay? Those students tended to not do very well on the exam, okay? Because I think they were just, they just kept answering questions until they, they guess at things and finally they get enough points, okay? But they didn't really understand it, okay? So the important thing is, do you understand how to get the right answer? And if you have a lot of trouble when you're starting it, and so you get a lot of them wrong, then your ultimate percentage is going to be relatively low, okay? But if you say, well, I know that's because I didn't understand it at first, but eventually I understood it, then you're okay. Because in terms of how your grade is calculated, on learning curve, it's going to be 100% or 0. Okay, I would say that if your percentage you get right is low on a chapter, then you want to ask yourself, do I really understand this? And if you say, I'm still not sure, then I would say keep working those questions. It's not going to raise your grade because you're already at 100. But it will raise your understanding, and that will raise your score on the exam. Yeah, so that's a really good question. I hope you Zoom people, I just got a message that our internet connection is unstable. Not sure exactly what that means, but I know it's not good. Hopefully it won't stop on us. If it does, I will, hopefully I'll be able to continue recording, and then you can watch the recording. Eventually, I hope to be able to get this where I can have a connection to my Surface through the Ethernet cable, which will be better than the Wi-Fi. They haven't gotten that worked out yet, but hopefully they will. I will revise the sapling dates, and I'll put up the sapling schedule, and it will have the correct dates on it. For keeping up with what you've done, I know that sapling, one of the weak points is that there's no single place you can go where it shows you the assignment dates that are when they're due and your grade. You can go to the grade book, but when you go to the grade book, they're not really in the right order. Okay? So that's why I recommend printing out the sapling schedule from Moodle and then just manually writing in your score once you finish something. Okay? It's kind of a clunky way to do it, but right now I think that's the best we can do. All right. Any questions so far? Okay. If you, let's see, I did want to mention one more thing. Well, if you go into Moodle on the main page, let's see, I believe it is right under the sapling schedule. There's a new link there that says additional study resources or something like that. If you click on that, it will take you to a Google Docs page, which has some practice questions, and it has links to videos where I'm working through those practice questions. Those are things that I have created in past semesters. I think those will be helpful to you. It doesn't cover everything that you need to know, but it covers some things that people tend to have trouble with. Right? I go through them very slowly. In fact, some of them, I'll spend 20 minutes on one question, because I'm not just trying to answer the question, I'm trying to point out how you go about answering the question. Here's the process you follow. And I also point out, a lot of students will do this. Don't do that. That will lead you to the wrong answer. So I'm pointing out this is what you should do. Here are some things that are very tempting that you shouldn't do. The reason people have trouble with economics, I'm convinced, is that they jump at answers that on the surface seem plausible. And rather than discipline themselves to think through it very carefully in the right order, they just see something, oh, that looks good. They jump at it, they get through with the test real fast, but then they're not very happy with their grade. So it's all about learning, what is the process that I need to follow? How do I think through these problems so that I get the right answer? And even though there are a lot of different kinds of problems we'll be covering in this course, the most important thing is just to switch from looking for the answer quickly to a much more thoughtful and slow and reflective mode. In fact, there's a Nobel Prize winning economist, Daniel Kahneman, who he's a psychologist, but he won the Nobel Prize in economics. And he wrote a book that's really fascinating, Thinking Fast and Slow. And he argues that it's useful to think of there being two different ways of thinking. There's the fast way of thinking, there's the slow way of thinking. When you are walking through a jungle and you see something out of the corner of your eye that kind of looks like a snake, you react very, very quickly. You don't analyze the situation. Okay? You have this reflex response. Okay? And he calls that system one thinking. And much of what we do is system one thinking. It allows us to make very quick judgments, react very quickly. And that's very, very useful in many situations. But there's another kind of thinking, which he calls system two, which is reflective. It's slow, it's careful, okay? And it's very important in some situations. So we got two ways of thinking. Many of us tend to use system one thinking most of the time. We look at something, jump to a conclusion quickly, we move on. And it works very well in a lot of situations. And the most important thing I can tell you is studying economics is not one of those situations. You're kind of programmed to do that system one thinking, but economics is the opposite of where you need to use that thinking. So you have to read the questions carefully, you have to read the chapter carefully, and think about what it means, and do it a lot more slowly than you would, say, read a novel or something like that. Okay? And the reason people often have so much trouble with economics is that they're using the wrong way of thinking. And I can't tell you how many students I've had who eventually they figure out they need to use this different way of thinking, and they say, well, this isn't that hard. And I say, yeah, you're right. It's not that hard when you're using the right mode of thinking. But when you're just looking for an answer that sounds good, sounds plausible, that's emotionally satisfying, then it is just impossibly difficult. Okay? So learning to think slowly and carefully is the secret to doing well in this course. And it's also the secret to doing well in a lot of things in life. Okay? System one thinking is important much of the time, but wisdom comes in knowing when you need to switch from the fast way of thinking to the slow way of thinking. Right? And, if you don't do that, you can get into big trouble. Okay. Well, I believe we're finally ready to actually get into talking about what economics is. So this is really the chapter one lecture. And we're going to begin with the basics. You know, what is economics? What is the definition of economics? There are different definitions that can be used, lots of different ways to define it. I'm going to give you the definition that I think is useful. And the purpose of our terms really that you have to memorize. What I'm trying to do with this lecture is get you to understand that economics is a way of thinking. It's a way of framing the world. And you have years and years of experience of people telling you, here's the way you look at the world. Okay? And maybe they gave you a logical reason to look at it that way. Maybe they just implied, you know, well, you're stupid if you don't look at it this way. Okay? But what I'm going to tell you in this class is I'm going to expose you to a different way of thinking than probably you've thought about before. Okay? And I think it's very useful. I think it will help you to make sense of what you see in the world. We have a lot of chaotic things going on. How do we make sense of all these things that are going on? I believe the economic way of thinking will direct your attention to the things that are most important for understanding things that are happening. And that are most important for helping us to figure out how do we get from where we are to where we want to be in the future, individually and as a society. How can everybody agrees we want improvement, we want progress, okay? But how do we achieve that? Okay? We'll spend some time talking about the past. Okay? We're a lot better off today than we were 100 years ago, okay? Or even 50 years ago. What accounts for those improvements? If we understand what leads to progress, then we're in a much better situation to make policy changes that will lead in the direction we want to go rather than in the direction we don't want to go, because things can definitely get worse. Okay? Never make the mistake of thinking things can't get any worse. They can get a lot worse. And economics will give you a way of thinking about life, really. And if you disagree, you say you think something that I've said is not correct, or we're leaving out something important, let me know. Okay? The way we progress is through free exchange of ideas. People need to be free to say what they're thinking. I've learned a lot from students. I've learned a lot from students who disagree with me. Okay? So feel free to disagree with me at any time in class or outside of class. All right. So let's begin with a definition for economics. We're going to define it this way. This is not exactly what the definition in your book gives, but it's consistent. Economics is the study of human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. Okay, maybe I can write on this. Economics is the study of human behavior as a relationship. Hold on. Between and scarce means which have alternative uses. Okay, so one more time. Economics is the study of human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. Excuse me. So notice what our focus is. Right? Our focus is not on money. A lot of people have the wrong idea about economics. They think, well, economists, they're only interested in money, profit, business. We are interested in those things, okay? But that's not the heart of economics. In fact, when I studied economics, economics was not in the College of Business. Everywhere I studied economics, it was in the College of Liberal Arts. And the first time I walked into a College of Business was when I started teaching. So economics is about much more than profit and money and business. Economics is about human behavior. We're interested in how people make decisions. And we use what's called the economic way of thinking to understand human behavior. And the economic way of thinking begins with two assertions. Okay? First, people pursue ends. People have things they want to achieve, things they want to have. They have objectives. Okay? They have goals. Okay? They have wants. And we're going to make the assertion that these wants are unlimited. So when we talk about these wants or these desires or objectives, okay, we're certainly including things like money, things like food, clothing, shelter, cars, but we're including all kinds of things as well. Everything that people want. People want friendship. People want a family. They want education. They want entertainment. They want world peace. Okay? People want all kinds of things. Okay? And we're making the assertion that there is no limit to the amount of these things that people would like to have. No matter what we get, we always want more. I remember when I was a high school student, I wanted a car. And I thought, well, if it runs, that's all I care about. If it runs, it'll be great. Well, I got a car that ran, and that was pretty much it. Okay? And I wasn't content. I wanted a newer car, a faster car, a better car. Finally got that. But then I wanted something even more. I wanted a car and a minivan because I had a family and I needed them. I wanted, shouldn't say need, I wanted a minivan because it would be easier to transport my family in. Okay? But once I got the minivan, I still wasn't content because you can't really transport furniture very easily. So I wanted a car, minivan, and a truck. Okay? Still don't have the truck, but once I get it, I'm probably not going to be content because then I'm going to start thinking, you know, it'd really be nice to have an RV. You know, then I could really have a good vacation. So no matter, the point is, no matter what we get, we then start thinking about something more that we want to have. And we often don't want to admit that our wants are unlimited. We want to say, well, I'm not greedy. I just want, there's a few things that I want, and when I get those things, that'll be all that I want. But that's not the way we actually are. Once we get those things, then we start thinking about something else that we want. Very important point here. We are not saying that we should be that way. We're not making any judgment about what we should be like. We're asserting that this is the way people are. Whether we should be or shouldn't be, separate question, important question, but it's a separate question. In economics, we try to deal with people as they are, because we want to be able to predict how people are going to behave. Okay? We're not saying people should be this way. We're saying this is the way we tend to be. We're also not saying that we only care about ourselves. Like I said, economists get misrepresented a lot, and you will hear people say, yeah, economists don't, they think everybody's selfish. Absolutely not. We'll be talking a lot about Adam Smith, who was considered the founder or the father of economics, and he wrote a whole book on morality and on what he thought people should be like. And he said that people, we're not only interested in ourselves. We do, he said, in fact, in the, I believe it's on the first page of his book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, he talks about how it's a part of human nature to care about ourselves, but to also care about other people, to want other people to do well. Okay? So we're not saying we only care about other people. Certainly we care about our families. Okay? Most people care about their relatives, their friends, their neighbors. Most people would say we should care about people in other countries, people who are poor, people who are suffering. So we've got this whole set of things we would like to have. Some of these things are to make me better off. Some of them are to make my family better off. Some of them are to help other people be better off. Think about, just to make the point, Mother Teresa, very famous. She's no longer living, but she's well known because she spent her life helping really, really poor people in India. Mother Teresa had unlimited wants. She wanted more. She never got as much as she wanted. She didn't want it so she could consume it herself. She wanted more so she could use it to help the poor people around her. Okay? So, some people might think she's a contradiction to what we're saying. No, she is confirming that even the best people, right, in many ways, still have unlimited wants because they want more so they can use it to help other people. We're not asserting that people are totally selfish. That is not at all what we're saying. So we said that the economic way of thinking begins with two assertions. First, that people pursue ends, these wants, objectives, and we have unlimited wants. And our second, this is the first, second assertion we're going to make is that we have limited resources. Limited resources with which to try to get all these things we would like to have. Okay? And you could really summarize the fundamental economic problem with these two assertions. There's no limit to the amount of things we'd like to have. There's this very definite limit to the resources we have with which to produce all those things. So we have a problem. We cannot produce all the things we want. We cannot have all of the things we would like to have. Okay? That is the fundamental economic problem. And everything in economics flows out of that fundamental problem. Okay? It's important anytime we use a term that we know exactly what we mean by that term. And I use the term resources. Okay, and we are using this term in a very broad manner to include any inputs that can be used to produce anything that anybody values. Okay? A resource is any input that can be used to produce anything that anybody values. Okay? Hold on just a second. Okay, and we can, in order to understand what we mean by resources better, we can divide these into three categories. Labor, capital, and land. Okay. Labor is also called human capital. When we talk about labor, we're talking about the mental and physical talents that people have. Any ability that you have or that anybody has to produce something that people value or to contribute to the production of something, that would be considered labor. And when we talk about human capital, your book gives, I think, a very good definition for that. Tools of the mind, the productive knowledge and skills workers acquire, okay, through education, through training, through on-the-job experience. Okay, so human capital is just a little bit more technical term for labor. Okay? You are in college because you want to add to your human capital. Okay? That you want to make yourself more productive. Okay? So that when you go out and when you graduate and you're looking for a job, you're not going out, saying, please, somebody hire me. You're not begging, you're not appealing to their generosity. You're acquiring human capital so that you can add something to a firm, so you can go interview with that firm, and you're not begging for a job. You're offering them, I'm willing to work for you. I have these skills. You want to show them that you would be beneficial for them. Now, in your mind, you may be focused on, I need a job. But in the employer's mind, they're focused on, I need workers. Okay? So just as you're looking for the job, they're looking for workers. Okay? They can't survive without workers. They can't survive without good workers. And so, every day you want to be thinking about, how can I add to my human capital so I'll be more valuable to an employer? And also, how can I demonstrate that I have those valuable skills and that valuable human capital? Because you can be incredibly brilliant and educated, but if you don't have a way to communicate that, you don't get hired. One of the big reasons that having a diploma helps you get a job is that it is a signal that I was able to do certain things. And so it's worth your time to talk to me and consider me. If you don't have the diploma, then they're wondering, well, why don't you have a diploma? You're probably not as productive as these other people who didn't take the time and didn't have the ability to get the diploma. Okay? So that's our first type of labor, or type of resource, human capital. Second, we generally just call it capital, but it is physical capital. Your book defines physical capital as the stock of tools, machines, and structures, equipment, all those things, physical things that we use, our businesses use to produce their output. Okay? They're both capital in the sense that we have a certain amount of it at a point in time. We use both of them to produce output. Okay? One is capital embodied in the person. You can't see it. The other is physical. You can see it. Okay? If you had to choose, which do you think is more important for a society, human capital or physical capital? Human capital, because you could have all kinds of incredible physical capital. If you don't have anybody who's educated and who knows how to use it, it has absolutely no value. So and if you have the human capital but no physical capital, then you can figure out how to get physical capital. If you have the physical capital but not the human capital, you can't figure out anything. Think about, well, I'll come back to that in a second. Then the third category is land or natural resources. And that includes the land itself, but also the minerals in the land, oil deposits, forests, lakes. Okay. Essentially anything that is naturally found in the environment. These are things that man didn't create. These things were created by God. They're there. We can use them. We can improve them, improve on them. But we didn't create them in the first place. So that would be land. Right? Think about the Indians 200 or 300 years ago. Right? Think about how much oil they had. They had lots and lots of oil because none of it had been used. How much good did it do them? Didn't do them any good at all because we use oil for a lot of things, but one of the most important would be for energy. Did they want energy? Absolutely they did. But they didn't know the oil could be used to produce the energy. Right? They needed human capital. They needed the technology. They need to figure out how do we use this thing that we have. In fact, it wasn't, I believe it was the 1850s before they figured out how to use petroleum oil to produce energy. Before that time, if you had a land and you discovered oil on your property, it was a disaster. It was terrible because it was sticky and messy and it wasn't good for anything. Okay? If you discover oil on your property today, are you upset by that? No, it's the same oil. The difference is now we have the human capital to figure out how to use it so that what had no value then is very valuable today. All right. Also, your book doesn't list this as a separate category of resource, but they do talk about it a lot, so I'm going to go ahead and list it here, and that is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship. And we're going to define that as the talent that some people have for organizing resources, recognizing new opportunities, developing better ways of doing things. Entrepreneurship is the talent that some people have. You could think of it as a kind of a subcategory of human capital. The talent that some people have for organizing resources, recognizing new opportunities, and developing better ways of doing things. An entrepreneur is, or someone who's using, some people are called entrepreneurs that they don't really have this ability. I had a friend growing up who thought he was an entrepreneur. And his parents were kind of wealthy, and they would give him money and he'd open a business. And very quickly, it was clear that people don't want the product you're selling in this location. And he'd lose a lot of money, go out of business, and then they give him more money. He'd open another store. And very quickly, it was clear, no, he doesn't have the ability to figure out better ways of doing things or to figure out what people want. He just has the ability to waste his parents' wealth. Okay? But an entrepreneur can look at a situation and has an idea. You know, I'll bet people in this location, they would value a fast food restaurant or a bowling alley. Okay? Has this idea, figures out how to act on that idea, how to establish that firm. Okay? And then if they really have the talent of entrepreneurship, then it will turn out that, yeah, they're right. People really do value the product that they are selling, and they make profits. If they're like my friend and he's not really an entrepreneur, then they're using up resources to produce something people don't value highly. So they get punished with losses. We're going to see that's part of the essence of a market economy. It's not really correct to say that a market economy is a profit system. It's a profit and loss system. And the idea is, if you're an entrepreneur, you come up with an idea, you get the money to act on it, and you take a chance. You invest your money, and if you're right and people value what you're producing, then you get rewarded with profit. So now you control more resources and you get to do more things. But if you think that people want something and they don't, you get punished with losses, and your ability to control resources in the future gets lower and lower. Jeff Bezos is a great example of that. Started Amazon. He did not at all come from a wealthy family, but he had an idea that he could use the internet to sell books, and he tried to get people to invest in his in his new company, and his parents wanted to invest, and he told them there is a 70% chance you will not get your money back. I think this is a good idea, but there's a whole lot of opportunity for this to go bad, and you'll never get your money back. But it turns out that he did have a good idea, and as he acted on that, he was rewarded with more profit, which means he could control more resources, so he could start selling not just books, but pretty much everything else. Okay? And he is. Some people have a very negative view of him because he's very wealthy. I would just ask you to consider, how was your life affected over the last 6 months by the presence of Amazon? I can't think of how many things I would not have been able to acquire if it had not been for Amazon or for a similar company. So they made a huge difference in my life, and a positive difference. I benefited from what Amazon did. Did Jeff Bezos benefit? Yes, he did. But his benefit was not at my expense. This is one of the things we'll see over and over. When you have market activity, trades are mutually beneficial. the seller benefits, he makes profit, but the consumer benefits as well. Everybody benefits generally from trade. Now, there are exceptions where you have fraud or something like that, but the general rule is people benefit from trade. It's mutually beneficial. Trade is the road to prosperity. That's a key theme we're going to come back to over and over. All right. We are going to talk throughout the course about what we're going to call the universal fact of scarcity. The universal fact of scarcity. We've already said that by scarcity, we just mean we don't have enough resources to produce all of the things that we would like to have. When we say that this is a universal fact, what do we mean by that? What does universal mean? Everywhere. Okay? Everywhere. It's very easy to misunderstand what we're saying here. Some people sometimes think that scarcity and poverty are the same thing. And it's very important to recognize that scarcity and poverty are not the same thing. Okay? When someone is living in poverty, okay, or if we say someone is living in poverty, that means that they do not have enough resources to achieve a minimum, a standard of living that we think of as being minimally acceptable. Okay? And so when we're thinking about poverty, there's a line. Okay? If you have a family of 4, let's say, then you could try to figure out how much income would you have to have in the United States, in Alexandria, Louisiana, how much income would you have to be above that minimally acceptable standard? And figuring that out would not be easy, and people would disagree on exactly what amount would be required, but there is some line there. It's very clear that if you look at somebody who all they own is a cardboard box, they're in poverty. And if you look at Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, it's very clear they're not in poverty. So you've got some people in poverty, some people who are not. Somewhere in between is the line, and we call that the poverty line. When we talk about scarcity, this is very different. Scarcity is not something that some people encounter, but other people don't. Okay? Think about Bill Gates. Okay? He has made billions and billions of dollars from Microsoft, from Windows. Is he living in poverty? No, no question about that. He's not in poverty. Okay? Does he face scarcity? The question is, does he have enough resources to achieve or to acquire all the things he would like to have? And the answer is absolutely no. Okay? There are lots of things he wants that he can't have. Okay? He and his wife started the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And the purpose of that foundation was to find a cure for a number of different diseases. And they have spent billions of dollars trying to find cures for the diseases they're focusing on. And they haven't found them. Okay? He has spent billions of dollars looking for a vaccine for COVID-19. Okay? He's currently building 7 factories which will produce the vaccine once it is discovered. Now these factories are different, so they don't know which one will actually be useful. Okay? But because he wants to minimize the, or he wants us to get the vaccine as soon as possible, he's building 7 different factories, even though most of them will not be useful. Okay? But whichever one is useful, he wants that to be ready as soon as they find the vaccine. Okay? Well, why is he only building 7 factories? Why is he not doing more research to find the vaccine? He doesn't have enough resources. There are all these things he would like to achieve. He would like to go down in history not as the richest guy in the world, not as the guy who founded Microsoft and created Windows. He would like to go down as the person who found a cure for these different diseases, person who used his wealth to achieve these important things. And yet he hasn't been able to achieve those things yet. And why? He doesn't have enough resources. He faces scarcity. Now, certainly his life is different from my life. It's different from your life. The choices he faces are different. When I wake up in the morning, I don't think, how should I use the money in my bank account to find a cure for COVID-19? I don't have that much money. He thinks about those things. So the point is that everybody faces scarcity. Everybody in the past faced it. Everybody in the present. Everybody in the future is going to face scarcity. Because as we develop cures and vaccines and new products and all kinds of great things, what happens to our wants? They keep going up. No matter what we get, we always want more. If you could bring somebody from 100 years ago to today, their first thought would be, well, they've got everything. You couldn't want more. But then the second day they were here, they would start thinking, well, yeah, but it would be nice to have other things. No matter what we get, we always want more. That's the way we are. That's the way other people are. And so we need to base our start our thinking with that. When we talk about when we say that a particular good is I am still struggling with how to write on this surface. Over the summer, I figured out how to do it at home, but up here, it's rather different. Try something. When we say that a particular good is a scarce good, we have a particular meaning for that. We mean that people want more of it than is freely available from nature. When we say something is a scarce good, we mean people want more of it than is freely available from nature. Okay? So what would be an example of a scarce good? Oil would certainly be a scarce good because we would like to have a lot of it. How much oil is freely available from nature? Well, even the oil that we know about, okay, it's very costly to find it. Okay? But even if we know exactly where it is, it's still not freely available from nature, because if you've got oil in your backyard, but the refinery is 400 miles away, you've got to transport it. So it's not, you don't have any oil freely available from nature. We'd like to have a lot, but clearly it is a scarce good. Everybody would agree with that. What about pencils? Are pencils a scarce good? Are pencils hard to get? No, you can, if you walk through the building, you'll probably find a few just laying around. If you go to Walmart, you can get pencils at a very low price. Why do you have to pay for them? You have to pay for them because they are scarce goods. How many, we'd like to have a lot of pencils. How many pencils are freely available from nature? You go into a forest where no man has ever been, how many pencils are going to be there? No, no pencils just evolve into existence. So there are no pencils freely available from nature. We'd like to have a lot. Pencils are scarce goods. What about water? Water is definitely a scarce good. Now, if you want small amounts of water, you can get, often you can get small amounts without having to pay anything. If you want very much water, or if you want it to be very good water, you have to pay for it. Basically, anything you have to pay for is a scarce good. If it were, and what did we say scarce means? People would like to have more of it than is freely available from nature. Why are you willing to pay money for a pencil? Because you don't, you don't have as many freely available from nature as you would like to have. There's really, most of the time, there's only one thing that we can generally think of as not being a scarce good. We call this a free good. So it's the opposite of a scarce good. A free good is one that there is more freely available from nature than people want. So it's the opposite. If it's scarce, people want more than is freely available from nature. If it's a free good, then there's more freely available from nature than people want. Can you think of something that might be a free good? It exists in this room. Air. Air is certainly a good. We have to, it's very valuable. We have to have it to live. But have you ever gone to the store and found a can of air where they're trying to sell you air? No. Why don't they try to sell it? People already have as much as they want freely available from nature. If you want more air, you just breathe more deeply. There's so much available, you're not willing to pay to get more. But for something that is a scarce good, there's not enough freely available from nature, so you are willing to pay more. Actually, I have been in a store where they sold air. Okay? If you go to certain parts of Colorado, high altitude, there's not as much oxygen freely available in the air as people want, and you can buy a can of oxygen, but that's rather unusual. It's very important to recognize that almost everything is a scarce good. Walk into Walmart, stop, look around, think about how many thousands of things are there. Every one of them, if you have to pay for it, that's the sign that it's a scarce good. Okay? And the price that you have to pay is very, very important, because the price that you pay represents the value of that resource to people. we're going to see once we get over to chapter 3 and chapter 4, how prices are determined. We're going to see the extremely important role that prices play. Most people do not appreciate the importance of prices and what prices can do. And most people in government do not appreciate that. Okay? Over the last 5 months, many of the problems we have had stem from people not appreciating the importance of prices and people saying, oh, we can't let the price of this go up. Okay? But prices play a critical role. Prices communicate information about a value of resources, and prices create incentives for consumers to economize on the amount they use and incentives for producers to produce more. So, in a word, things we're going to talk about in this class, prices are one of the absolute most important things. And once you start to see the role that prices play, you will look at the world around you very differently. You'll start to see things that you haven't seen before. And just walking into the store can become much more interesting because you start wondering, that price went up. Why did that happen? This price went down. Why did that happen? And you're going to see that even though the producer is they're just trying to make profit, okay? But the price is playing a vital role for society as a whole. And it's good for some prices to go up at some times and for others to go down at some times. All right, we are out of time. We will stop here. Next time, I should say, I will not be covering everything that you need to know in the lectures. We just don't have time. I will try to talk about the things that are most important and things I think you'll have trouble with. Okay? But just because I don't talk about it in class doesn't mean it's unimportant. Okay? If it's in sapling, then it's important. And some of the sapling questions are somewhat harder than I would give you on the exam. But even there, it's important to think through it, because if you can do a hard question, then you can do an easier question. Okay? Any questions? All right. Well, the plan is this Thursday, I will not see you people. I will see the Zoom people. And hopefully our plan works out this time. I haven't checked the weather lately, but I don't think there's going to be another hurricane. If you have problems, questions, send me an email or give me a call, and we'll work it out. Okay. All right. See you later. Yeah. What is your name?
Abraham.
Okay. Yeah, we talked, or I had email from you. Yeah. Okay, so your last name is Abraham? Okay. All right. Okay. All right, I'll mark that you're here. Oh, and you will be coming. This is the right day for you. You too.